You are going to love this episode I have for you today. Tinna Jackson is my guest, and she is a nationally recognized executive strategist and leadership coach with nearly 3 decades of experience in high-stakes political, nonprofit, and corporate spaces. As a former deputy chief of staff in the United States Senate and C-suite executive at a national political committee, she brings unmatched expertise in emotional intelligence, power dynamics, and executive positioning. And today, she works with senior leaders and mission-driven organizations to drive clarity, influence, and results, delivering not just advice, but action. And in this conversation with Tinna, she and I explore what she learned after more than 2 decades working in national politics. From her early days as an executive assistant to serving as deputy chief of staff in the United States Senate, Tinna witnessed and saw firsthand how leadership decisions shape workplace culture, team performance, and the careers of the people who serve under them. Tinna shares the leadership patterns, these leadership behavioral patterns she observed time after time, which include where talented professionals being promoted without the emotional intelligence or self-awareness needed to lead people effectively. We unpack why so many leaders avoid difficult conversations, how a lack of self-awareness erodes trust within teams, and what authentic leadership actually looks like in practice. And we dive into the inspiration behind Tinna's book, The Power Play Journal, which is a reflection and strategy guide built around real-world leadership challenges and the lessons she gathered throughout her career. This conversation is a powerful reminder that leadership is not just about authority or driving results. It's about so much more than that. It's accountability, it's communication, it's the ability to create an environment where people can do their best work and be at their best. With that, here's my conversation with Tinna. Tinna, thanks so much for joining me on the Humble Rising podcast. It's so good to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Tinna, we tend to start our conversations here on the podcast with your story. So tell us just more about who you are, what you do, and some of the background and the experiences that have led you to do what you do today.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, Tinna Jackson out of Washington, D.C. The majority of my career has been spent in national politics. I've worked in the U.S. Senate for over 10 years, where I started as an executive assistant and moved up to deputy chief of staff, where I had the opportunity to run multiple offices, both in Washington, D.C. and in the state of Nevada, as well as doing some fundraising, some political fundraising. From there, I did some nonprofit work and also went to a national political committee for about 8 years. And then I realized, this political climate is really, it's really interesting. As you're going through your career, specifically in politics, you just notice a lot of things, right? And I've had several promotions. I was in 2 C-level positions, and one of the things that I noticed, what led me to doing coaching and management consulting, is recognizing that across the board, the common thread when people are promoted, whether it's for loyalty or subject matter expertise, a lot of times people are thrown into positions with the hope that they will do well in terms of managing people. And the lack of emotional intelligence and self awareness going into those big roles can be really, really difficult on the leader that's taken on that significant responsibility. And so when I recognized that, I started keeping notes. And look, we've all had good experiences with bosses. A lot of us have had bad experiences with bosses. And those experiences stay with us forever and ever. In some cases, it contributes to some of the trauma and the triggers that we unhappy experience as well, right? And so I started, over time drafting this book called the Power Play Journal. Um, Kind of as a playbook for leaders to refer to and do some self-reflection on 32 what I call as, battle tested strategies. And these aren't new strategies, but these are things that leaders are going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to self-reflect at some point to determine how well they're doing in their journey, their leadership journey.
So, Tina, we're going to go back to the book in a little bit because I want to spend some time going into that in more depth. But I want to take a step back because you were talking about, when individuals get elevated to certain levels of leadership, there's this hope that, we all know hope is not a strategy, but there is a hope that they will do well in managing people and how critical it is for you to have the self-awareness and emotional intelligence to manage yourself and to manage others. So I want to talk a little bit more about more of the lessons you learned and what you saw in your roles about leadership and what, not even if you don't have to be in politics, you could be a corporate executive or any kind of other executive in an organization. What did your work and what did your observations teach you about leadership that most executives in any kind of organization would benefit from understanding and applying?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the lack of self-awareness that I recognized over like a 20-year period, right? Um, there are so many people that go through their lives and careers not recognizing how their words and how their behavior impacts other people. And some people who I've seen get promoted over time, there's kind of a duality of personalities, right? It's like they're one way with a particular group of people that recognizes their best self, that talent that gets promoted. And then there's another version of that person that the employees or the people that end up reporting to them see. And those are two different people. And I was hoping over time that I would see people reconcile those those two different versions of themselves into one authentic leader.
Mm.
And that has not happened many that many times. But there are some people who just have not been able to receive feedback. And I think it's detrimental to their careers. You're only going to make it to a particular level before someone calls you out and hurts your feelings.
Mhm.
Over the years, you either have not been in a place to receive that feedback or you just don't believe it.
Mhm.
You just don't believe it. And I think if you don't know yourself, if you don't know your triggers, if you don't know what makes you tick, if you don't know what inspires you, um, it's going to be difficult for you to recognize that in others so that they can help move your vision forward. And there's so many people that just don't grasp that and how important that is.
Tina, do you think that they don't grasp it or don't understand how important it is or don't work at it proactively because they don't have a quote unquote reason to? Meaning the accountability for not being self-aware isn't high? Is that I mean, I actually don't know the answer to that question. I think in some organizations, the answer is there is no accountability for when you suck as a leader. Like, I think for in a lot of organizations, it's did you deliver the results? Yes. Okay, well, let's coach that person on this thing. But they're gonna keep staying in this position because they're getting us what we need and they're excelling in this certain way. And then there are organizations where it absolutely does matter. Like you are held to account. So I'm curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, I think it's a both and. I've had situations, I've actually coached people who had difficulty receiving feedback and had never been told that maybe the reason their staff is turning over so frequently is because they're actually that bad,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
I think the other part of that too is if an organization understands and honors the importance of the employee and the employee's well-being, that actually contributes to a high level of performance.
Mhm.
And I applaud those organizations. I really do. Um, but then you're right. There are other organizations where it's about the revenue. It's about the bottom line. This person is doing, everything we need them to do, except just not good at this management piece. Okay, if that is the case, and if they're bringing in revenue, then make them hire a number two that's going to manage up to them and keep them out of the day to day, and have someone else come in and manage the staff and manage up to them. The other thing I think too is the people that are making the decisions, knowing full well that this person is not good at this one thing, but they're so great at this, they don't want to feel like an idiot knowing that they had one reservation in the promotion, but they went ahead with it anyways.
Mhm.
I wish leaders would just be okay with saying, no, I misjudged that one.
Mhm.
And what we're going to do is this, come up with like, it is okay to make a mistake. Hiring is 50-50. The person that shows up in the interview, I hope they show up as the same person.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you have some people who have bad interviews, who you truly believe in, you see their talent, but they, screwed up on one or two questions. You hire them and they're rock stars.
Yes.
So it's honestly, hiring's a crapshoot.
Yeah. Sometimes it is. Yes, yes. But I also think there is this there's this need for, when you get elevated into certain levels of leadership, obviously there are leaders above you making those decisions. And I think sometimes leaders don't want to have hard conversations that would be actually helpful to those who are new in different positions of leadership. So for example, having the conversation of, hey, we think that you could crush this role. And we think these are your blind spots and you need to work on them. And we're going to help you work on them. We're going to get you a coach. We're going to put together a plan to help you with it, but you need to address these things as well. We see your potential. We want to see you succeed, and frame it in a way where it's about their success in the role and about supporting the people on the team, because, and you know this, Tina, that you are successful if your team is successful. Like, it is the team that really matters. So I do think there's an onus on higher level leaders to point out and say, "Hey, we do think you're great, and there are things that you can work on, like all of us have things to work on."
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you're right, and what's interesting about that is there's so many leaders that are afraid to have those conversations. They have avoided,
Yes.
year after year, they have avoided these conversations, and it's like, "Well, how'd you get here?" You know, sometimes you wonder, like,
Yes, because you have to be able to have these conversations. And so you wonder, how did you get here if you are you're avoidant and fearful of the hard things?
absolutely, like, these are things you just cannot escape having these conversations. And, I understand not wanting to hurt someone's feelings, but it's really not about that. It's about their development, and it is not about you and how you feel. If that is the case, then you've got to rehearse. Maybe, jot down some notes, always start with a positive.
Mhm.
And again, it's truly about, if you really care about your staff, it's truly about their development and them being able to excel and elevate in the future.
And sometimes when you mentioned, you can start with a positive, something that's positive that they've done or something that's working really well, is equipping yourself as a leader with a framework that you're going to use. Like, here's the framework in my brain that I always pull on for these kinds of conversations, so that I'm taking myself out of the emotional part of it and I'm giving feedback on the performance, on behavior. I'm not giving feedback on the person. And sometimes I think leaders benefit from having default sentences, like default things we don't have to think about them, because leaders freeze.
Right.
They freeze, and then it's awkward, right? Then they're having this awkward conversation, then they don't say what they need to say, or they don't say it clearly, although they'll tell you they did, but it wasn't clear, right? And that's why I tell people all the time, there's a reason why so many leaders, the I think one of the top 3 issues that they work on is effective communication, because it can be really difficult, especially when you said this earlier, you have to understand your triggers, you have to understand your own trauma, you have to understand your default reaction, because there's a reason why you cower and you avoid, right? There's a reason why you're doing that, and getting underneath that will then help you actually have these conversations.
I had this one CEO client who could not give one person in particular any negative feedback.
Mm.
As in his previous life, in another position, he had to let go of someone who was a lot older, and it was so triggering for him to have to do this again that he not only froze, he completely avoided it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, well, sir, then HR director, if you're not going to do it, hire and these people are nightmares for HR.
Yeah, I know it, I know they are.
Ernie, you know this, right? They're nightmares.
Because you have the it also it's, sometimes you're so focused on your how you're feeling about it,
Yeah.
and you have to separate that from what's best for the organization and for the team. Because also when you keep someone on the team also that is not performing, everyone knows you're avoiding it. And it is not it creates this environment where you've lowered the bar for the team, and the team then doesn't trust you. And then, they'll be like, well, so and so, you let so and so stick around here and they're not doing anything, or they're not operating at the level that we're operating at, and you let him hang around, but you're gonna give me feedback. It just erodes this trust
Right.
that you have to have on that team.
Right. That's right.
Tina, you mentioned authentic leadership. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. How would you define what it means to be an authentic leader? What does it look like? What are these leaders doing differently?
I don't know if it's that they're doing anything differently. I think they're just being brutally honest and open, right? I think being able to pull a team together and be open with information within reason, right? Obviously, there's some things that would have to, be confidential. You're not going to share your profit and loss statements with the staff. But but when you have a critical mission and a vision for what needs to get done, if you don't share that why, you're going to have a staff going in multiple different directions, right? Walking away, not being clear on what it is that you truly need. They can figure out the how. That's why you've hired them, because they could probably implement. But if you're not sharing, if this is a situation where you are doing things on a need to know basis, and if you're a leader um who was promoted for the subject matter expertise and loyalty, and you haven't had any of this people management experience, it's going to be very difficult. But I feel like authentic leaders are open to feedback. They're also open to sharing information so that staff can do their jobs effectively. It's and this isn't a power grab for them. They're very mission driven, and they're about getting the business done, caring more about the mission than the critique.
Yeah, it seems like it's mission driven, and it's transparency,
Yeah.
right? It's transparency of, this is what we're doing, this is why,
Mhm.
and to move the team forward, but in a way where your team knows, like, you also have their back,
Right.
and they also have your back, because you've laid it out there, like, you're there's nothing I'm not telling you.
That's right. And you build trust that way. People recognize what you do. Um,
Mhm.
and if you say you're going to do something, you keep your word and you do it, then people will follow you forever because they know exactly what to expect. They're going to expect you to do what you say you're going to do. And that's a huge trust builder.
Exactly. You're consistent and they can rely on that.
Right.
Especially in challenging times, right? I know my leader is steady. She'll or they will tell me the truth. I'll know where I'm going. I know why. I know where my work fits in the larger why. So I feel like I'm here for a purpose and I'm connected and I'm in and I'm locked in. Yes, so important. Tina, let's talk about the Power Play Journal.
Right.
Talk to me more about, I mean, you've already mentioned a little bit why you wrote the book, but talk to us a little bit more about who you who you really wrote it for specifically. Who is like your number one kind of target, ideal reader? And share with us a little bit more about why you really felt like I need to share these battle tested strategies.
I got to be honest. I wrote it with all of my colleagues and past colleagues and friends in mind. You know, the people you go to happy hour with.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all get together and we talk about our management challenges, and you look over and you're like, you're not even qualified for that job. I don't even job. Uh, this is why you're failing. I really did. I'm like, I don't want people to overthink leadership.
Mm.
Think about Don't have amnesia. Remember what it was like when you were a junior staffer, when you were interviewing and you wanted this job and you got that job. You get there, bright eyed and bushy tailed, and your boss rings you for no reason. You have no idea how this mistake happened. If you made the mistake, actually, it was someone else. I mean, think about those times and be the leader that you needed during those times. It is not hard. Like, just don't be an asshole. That's really, honestly, that is what it's about for me. Don't be that person.
Don't be that person.
You know,
Please don't.
you know, I'll give you an example. I've heard so many horror stories from people over the years when they've had losses in the family. And the standard 3 days of bereavement. But when you lose a mom, you lose a dad, or a best friend, like that's it's all life changing. But when you're losing someone that is it's so close and intimate in your life, you need some additional time. And I can't tell you, like, so many horror stories from people where their boss called them wondering when they were going to return. It was literally the day after the family member's funeral. I even had a horror story when my mom died. My boss came over to my house to the family repast and literally said to me in front of my family, "When are you going to come back to work? Because my inbox is just flooded." It's like, well, and I'm 21. I'm literally 21 at the time. And again, see how this stuff sticks with you? I'm 50 now. This happened when I was 21. And I just not cool.
Mm.
But there's so many people that have similar horror stories. And I think leaders have to remember that it's not different when it happens to them, right? When they experience those kinds of losses, it's okay for them to take their time, right? But it's different for a staffer or for your employee to need either the same amount of time, or at least be given it be extended the same grace, you know. Uh
Mhm.
yeah, so
I love that you said that not being an asshole is not that hard to do.
right.
Like, I li and I mean, I chuckle at it, and I think about the leaders that I've worked with directly and who I've observed and who I know about, in different organizations I personally have been a part of. And I think about the ones who are known to be assholes. They're like, At least you know what you get with that person. And then others who I've seen it where they were an asshole and then they slowly shift to not being so much of an asshole. And it's so much better for everybody because they've done some work on why do I show up this way? And a lot of it is because that's how they were quote unquote trained, right? Like they saw that behavior role modeled. And so they don't know any different. And they're like, okay, well, I guess I have to do this way. I've been mistreated by leaders in the past. And I remember um, another leader talked to me about it. And she said, the way that she's treating you is not okay. And then I said, oh, well, she said that she was treated that way by her superior when she was coming up. And then the other person said, no, she wasn't, because I know that person. And that's not true. And even if it was true, it's not okay. So sometimes you need like other leaders to be talking to that leader about what's going on. But I do agree that this doesn't have to be as hard as we make it, right? Like, would you want to be treated that way? No. So maybe adjust your behavior 5% and see if that helps you. Like, I do think there are these, I love how you gave it to us. That's like the bottom line. But why don't you share a little bit more, Tina, about maybe your top power plays from your book that you would want our listeners to obviously check out, but just walk away with in terms of this conversation? It could be your top power plays or the ones that you feel like people just need to really be reminded of them. Which ones would you want to highlight for us?
I would definitely highlight the first strategy, which is resilience, right? Um,
Mhm.
Especially with what's happening in general across the country and people having so many personal feelings about what's happening with the federal government, our president, and so forth. Um, you have to be able to bounce back from all kinds of things, from uncertainty to losing funding and having a backup plan for the backup plan. For me, during my time with the political committee, I lost two brothers during COVID, and literally, I lost them back to back, like literally 2 weeks apart. When we were having the funeral for the first brother, on the same morning we found out about the second brother having passed. And it was a lot for me to deal with. I had to pay a lot of money to get my brothers buried. But I also had this very important C-level job that at some point I needed to return to. And I did return to that job pretty quickly, but I told everyone around me, you know, I need to extend myself grace and I would appreciate you giving me space when I need it. Um I continued to perform at the high level that I did, but at the same time, I made sure that when I had feelings coming up that I took that time, whether it was a day or an afternoon, or if I needed to walk around the block, or if I needed to go get myself a big steak, or if I needed to go shopping for a minute, because when grief comes up, it comes out of nowhere.
That's right. It's not linear. That's right.
You could smell something and it reminds you of a cologne or a perfume of the person, or you smell fresh bread baking at the bakery, you think of your mom, or you know what I mean, like it just comes out of nowhere. And so being able to extend yourself that grace and making it very clear that when you need that space, you need it and you take it. And so I think resilience is very important. Some people, it's difficult for some people to bounce back. But there is a way. And then once you get to the other side of it and you can push through it, you'll be fine. And so I think resilience is important. I always talk about self-awareness. Self-awareness is very important. The other side of self-awareness though is emotional regulation. It is important to know the difference between reacting to negative information and responding to negative information, right? Um, but you can't regulate your emotions if you're not self-aware and you don't know your triggers. If you don't know your triggers, you are responding and reacting in so many chaotic ways, which ultimately damages relationships because you can't reconcile your thoughts and your feelings at the same time. And that's very detrimental, especially in organizations, especially in your relationships with your family, with your friends, and your peers.
Yeah, you have to be intentional. And intentionality can be really difficult because you're right, you're operating in that space between something has happened, I'm getting an input, and then I have a default reaction based on who I am and my nervous system and my emotional system. But you have to there's like that little opportunity in there before you actually respond. And Tina, I don't know about you, but I am a processor. Like I have to process, especially if I'm getting like inundated with something. My nervous system tends to go down and I need space to think about it and process. Where some people are not processors, they're like, they just go. And and in fact, when I'm in a I don't know about you, Tina, but when I'm in a room of people or I'm with someone and they are their nervous system is off the chain and they're not emotionally regulating themselves and they're at this level, I shrink even more because I'm like, oh, and that's a trauma response for me. Like I recognize that. When I was growing up, if people were getting stressed or angry, I would go down in terms of my level of anything. I wouldn't say anything. I would get quiet because I'm trying to co-regulate them to come back down a bit. Right. And so I do think that I'm sure you've seen it, leaders who just go off. They just like go off. And then afterwards act like it's all good. And I'm like, did you see what just happened? Like you
It's
can't act like that in front of people.
a path. Absolutely. Yes. It's funny you say like what I tend to do when I recognize that someone's like really heightened and their speech is like, their voices are
Yes.
um I don't know that you're supposed to do this, but I tend to touch. I'll like grab the person's hand
Oh, yes, to help
or,
regulate.
or like touch their arm or something or shoulder. Not to say if you're not to even ask the question if you're okay, but to just touch them to let them know that I'm here for you,
Mhm.
but you need to freaking calm down.
Calm down.
Because I've always been, look, in all of my roles, I've always been the person to deal with the difficult individuals.
Mm.
I've always
I
done,
see why, because I see why though, because you have a nice balance of like directness and like, compassion, but directness, and we're gonna do both. And I can see that.
yeah. So I've always kind of been that person. So I will like reach out and touch. I will like grab the person's back. I might even lock arms with the person and say, "Hey, do you want to take a walk?"
Yes,
And,
yes.
I'll even like interrupt a meeting and just say, "Hey, let's go get a soda or something.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Let's take a break."
We need a break. We need a break. Don't say something you're not going to mean. We need a break. No, I do. Resilient self-awareness, critical. And, resilience, I can imagine people listening thinking to themselves, but Tina, why do I always have to be so resilient all the time? Because what's happening right now is crazy and I'm feeling just overwhelmed. I was already feeling overwhelmed by life. And then I'm overwhelmed by the world and this weight.
Sure. And
What do you say in response to that?
my question would be why?
Mm,
Taking on the stress of the world.
mm,
It's not your stress. I had to learn that. I had to learn that pretty freaking quickly over the last several years. Like I was absorbing other people's stress. I'm like, this is not my problem. What is going on here? The only thing I could do is, maybe provide a little support, coach, mentor, but ultimately I can't absorb that person's problem and care more about their issue more than they do.
mm.
Especially look, we can't solve the world's problems. We can be
Yeah, I think they're too many. And I sometimes I don't even know which ones to prioritize. Like, is it our democracy? I don't know which one. But I do know that it can. I do allow I know people who don't listen to the news or watch the news or, like, have any news feed, and I used to be like that. I now get, once a week, I get, like, a rundown from the New York Times of what's most important, what's going on, because I found myself getting up in the morning, checking the news, and it was just like negativity everywhere and just awful things happening. And awful things have always been happening. I think this is a different level. But I found myself having to, like you said, like I was absorbing so much and I had to let that go because it wasn't helping my mindset every day. It was not helpful to me. So now I focus on the issues that I care about and I step there on those issues, but I can't focus on everything because none of us can. And I do what I can within what's within my control, and most things are not within my control. So accepting that and hoping, like I know hope is not a strategy, but hoping and having faith in the people who are responsible for these things or are fighting for these things that we're on the right side of history in the end at some point. But knowing that I can't fix everything even though you want to and you feel like things are so wrong, but, it's also about taking care of yourself. So I love that you acknowledge, like, I was absorbing everything, and then I said, "I can't do anything about that."
It is impossible.
Yeah,
Plus, we're not getting paid for it.
I know why. At least at work, you get paid for all the stress.
Like, bro, sis, it's not your job. It's okay. Like, just let it go.
It's okay. It's gonna be no, but and I think it will. I mean, some people say, "Oh, it won't be okay," and I say, you know, I think it will be at some point. I don't know when, but I would like to have faith that it will be, and to make sure that you're taking care of yourself during this time because you can't get that back. You can't get that time back.
Yeah, at some point, I think people have to think about, like, what is it that you believe in?
Yes.
If you believe things are going to continue to be chaotic and the world is going to come crashing down, if you believe that, for you, that may be the case. But if you are grounded in your faith and you walk with spirit or walk with the Lord, and you
Yeah.
truly believe everything's going to be okay, then it is going to be okay for you.
Yes. And believe that. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, Tina. So tell us where people can find you if they want to reach out to you, connect with you, even coach with you.
Absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn, Tinna Jackson, Tina with two N's. Also TinnaJackson.com. And I am also on all of the social media platforms pretty much. I am Tinna Jackson on Instagram.
Amazing. Tina, thank you so much for joining us. And I will put your book link in the show notes and I'll put all those links in the show notes so people will definitely know how to reach out to you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with me on the Humble Rising podcast. I hope today's conversation left you with a new perspective, a little encouragement, or the reminder you needed to keep moving forward with confidence and intention. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone in your life who could use it too. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. It helps more people discover these conversations and become part of our growing community. And if you'd like more support on your growth journey, be sure to check out the show notes for additional resources and ways to connect with me. Until next time, remember, you have the power to lead, work, and live in a way that feels purposeful, fulfilling, and true to you.